The rider fell unconscious after the final ride. But when everyone stepped back, the horse slowly approached, and what it did in front of him stopped the entire rodeo. The morning sun had barely begun its climb over the eastern horizon when Maya Rodriguez woke with a start. Her small trailer creaked in the soft Texas breeze, the metal walls thin enough that she could hear the distant lowing of cattle from neighboring pastures. She sat up on her narrow bed, pushing aside the patchwork quilt she'd inherited from Sarah, the only foster mother who had ever truly loved her. Maya reached for the mason jar on her rickety bedside table, counting the coins and crumpled bills inside by the pale morning light filtering through faded curtains. $278.35. Not enough. Not nearly enough for the down payment on even the smallest plot of land, but closer than she'd been last month. She dressed quickly in worn jeans and a faded plaid shirt, her movements efficient after years of early mornings. At 24, Maya's face retained a youthful softness, but her eyes held the quiet wariness of someone who had learned early that the world rarely offered second chances. Her long black hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, still carried the shine of youth, but her hands told a different story, calloused and strong from years of physical labor. As she laced up her scuffed work boots, Maya's mind drifted back to her first night in the foster system, 17 years ago. The social worker's voice still echoed in her memory. Your parents tried to give you a better life. They died trying to cross the border. You're American now. Try to remember that. But America had never fully embraced Maya Rodriguez. Sweetwater, Texas, with its vast ranches and deep-rooted families, had clear, if unspoken, hierarchies. People like Maya cleaned stables. They didn't own them. Her phone buzzed, an ancient model with a cracked screen, a text from Jason Tucker, capataz of the Blackwell Ranch. Emergency cleaning needed at main stables. Double pay. Can you come now? Maya's heart quickened. Double pay meant an extra $50, money that would go straight into the mason jar. She texted back a quick affirmative, grabbed her small backpack containing water and a sandwich, and headed out. The 5-mile walk to Blackwell Ranch took her past fields of grazing cattle and sprawling estates. As Maya walked, the town of Sweetwater came to life around her. Pickup trucks rumbling down dusty roads, workers heading to early shifts, sprinklers beginning their morning dance over manicured lawns of homes she would never afford. Blackwell Ranch appeared on the horizon like a small kingdom unto itself. The property, over 10,000 acres of prime Texas ranch land, had been in the Blackwell family for 4 generations. The pristine white fences, freshly painted barns, and imposing main house stood in stark contrast to the trailer Maya called home. As she approached the stables, Maya noticed unusual activity. Ranch hands speaking in hushed tones, tension evident in their postures. When she entered, Jason Tucker strode toward her, his weathered face pinched with worry. "Thanks for coming on short notice," he said, leading her toward the supply closet. "We've got a situation with the new arrival." "New arrival?" Maya asked, pulling on work gloves. Jason lowered his voice. Jackson Blackwell bought a new stallion, Thunder, pure Spanish-Arabian cross, championship bloodlines, cost him $200,000. Maya whistled softly, more money than she'd ever see in a lifetime. "What's the emergency?" she asked, gathering cleaning supplies. Jason's expression darkened. "The horse is difficult, dangerous even. Came from a breeding farm in Kentucky. During transport, there was an accident. The trailer overturned. His trainer was crushed right in front of him. Horse survived without a scratch, but he hasn't been the same since." "Traumatized," Maya said. Not a question. "That's putting it mildly. He's put 3 handlers in the hospital this week alone. Frank Miller, you know him, the head trainer? He's talking about using the traditional breaking methods, the ones with spurs and crops." Maya felt a familiar knot of anger in her stomach. Those methods don't heal trauma. They just teach animals to obey out of fear. Jason shrugged. "Tell that to Blackwell. He wants the horse ready for the rodeo circuit in 3 months. Paid too much to let him sit around being traumatized." Maya focused on her work, moving through the empty stalls with practiced efficiency. The stables at Blackwell Ranch were state-of-the-art: clean concrete floors, automatic waterers, climate control. She worked her way systematically down the row, but as she neared the end of the main corridor, she felt an unmistakable sensation of being watched. The feeling led her to an isolated stall, separated from the others at the far end of the building. Unlike the others, this one had additional bars reinforcing the standard door. A small sign read, "Danger, authorized personnel only." Maya stepped closer, careful to make her movements slow and deliberate. Inside stood one of the most magnificent horses she had ever seen. A stallion so black, he seemed to absorb the surrounding light. At least 16 hands high, with powerful shoulders and a proudly arched neck, he exuded both nobility and barely contained power. But it was his eyes that captivated Maya. Deep, intelligent eyes that held not aggression, but something she recognized immediately: fear masked as anger. The same look she'd seen in the mirror countless times during her years in the foster system. The stallion stood perfectly still, watching her with unnerving intensity. His ears, which she expected to be pinned back in warning, were instead cautiously forward, assessing her. "You're alone too, aren't you?" Maya whispered in Spanish, her mother's language that always felt more natural for expressing deeper truths. The stallion's reaction was immediate and surprising. His ears pivoted sharply toward her voice, and his nostrils flared, taking in her scent. Something in her tone, devoid of fear or authority, seemed to reach past his defenses. She took a small step closer to the stall door. "I understand what it's like when the world sees you as dangerous just because they don't understand you." Thunder remained still, his dark eyes fixed on hers. Maya reached her hand toward the stall door, not entering his space, merely offering her presence. "Maya, get away from there now." Jason's voice shattered the moment as he ran toward her from the main entrance. "That devil has nearly killed men twice your size." Maya didn't move, maintaining the connection with Thunder. "He's not a devil," she said quietly. "He's scared." Jason reached her, ready to pull her back, but froze at what he saw. Thunder, the terror of the stables, had moved closer to the door where Maya stood. His head was lowered slightly, not in submission, but in what appeared to be curiosity. He remained several feet from the bars, maintaining his safety zone, but the usual aggressive pawing and threatening posture were absent. "My God," Jason whispered. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing," Maya answered without breaking eye contact with the stallion. "I just showed him. I understand what it's like to be afraid." The moment was interrupted by the sound of multiple footsteps approaching. Jackson Blackwell himself appeared, flanked by his son Carter and Frank Miller, the ranch's head trainer. Jackson, in his 60s with silver hair and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power, stopped abruptly at the sight before him. "What's going on here?" he demanded, eyes narrowing at Maya. "Who authorized you to be near that animal?" "She's the cleaning girl I called in, sir," Jason explained quickly. "I was just telling her to stay away from Thunder's stall." Frank Miller, a burly man with a perpetual scowl and reputation for harsh training methods, stepped forward. "This area is restricted for good reason. That horse is unpredictable and dangerous." Carter Blackwell, a younger version of his father with the same cold eyes but none of the earned authority, looked Maya up and down dismissively. "Shouldn't you be mopping floors somewhere else, chica?" Maya finally turned from Thunder, facing the men with quiet dignity despite her worn clothes and humble position. "I was cleaning, sir. I didn't mean to intrude." Jackson Blackwell studied her with unexpected interest, then looked past her to Thunder, who remained unusually calm. "You're the Mexican girl who works at the Peterson place too, aren't you? The one they say has a way with difficult horses." "I'm American, sir," Maya corrected gently. "Born in Arizona, my parents were Mexican." "Whatever," Jackson waved dismissively. "Is it true what they say? That you can calm horses others can't handle?" Before Maya could answer, Carter snorted. "Dad, you're not seriously considering letting the cleaning lady near your investment? Frank here has 20 years of professional experience." "And in those 20 years," Jackson replied sharply, "has Frank managed to get within 5 feet of this particular horse without it trying to kill him?" He turned back to Maya. "Well, girl, Can you work with him or not?" Maya looked back at Thunder, who was still watching her intently. "I don't work with horses, Mr. Blackwell. I listen to them." "Listen to them?" Frank scoffed. "We don't need horse whisperers. We need that animal ready for the rodeo circuit in 3 months. That requires proper breaking and training, not sentimental nonsense." "I paid $200,000 for that horse," Jackson said, his eyes calculating. "And every day he's not in training is money lost. Frank here says we need to break him the old-fashioned way." "Breaking is exactly what you shouldn't do," Maya said, feeling her heart race at her own boldness. "He's already broken inside. He needs healing, not domination." Carter laughed derisively. "Dad, you can't seriously be listening to this? Stable cleaner?" But Jackson was watching with interest as Thunder moved slightly closer to the stall door, his attention still fixed on Maya even amid the conversation. 1 week, Jackson decided suddenly. "You have 1 week to show me results. If you fail, Frank takes over with his methods. If you make progress, we'll discuss a more permanent arrangement." "Sir," Frank protested, "this is highly irregular." "So is paying $200,000 for a horse no one can ride," Jackson cut him off. "I'm a businessman, Miller. I recognize potential solutions when I see them." He turned to Maya. "Be here tomorrow at dawn. Jason will give you access." As the men departed, Carter lingered behind, leaning close to Maya. "Don't get comfortable. When you fail, and you will, things go back to how they should be. People like you cleaning stables, people like us running them." Left alone with Thunder, Maya turned back to the magnificent animal. "I'll be back tomorrow," she promised softly. "And no one's going to hurt you again." To her amazement, Thunder extended his neck through the bars of the stall, and for the first time since the accident, allowed human fingers to gently touch his muzzle, a small gesture of trust that no one had believed possible. Maya didn't notice Jackson Blackwell standing in the shadows of the doorway, watching with calculating interest, whispering to his son, "That girl could be exactly what we need, or our biggest problem." Maya felt Thunder's warm breath on her palm, the gentlest of touches that carried worlds of meaning. Such a small gesture from this powerful, frightened creature meant more than any words could express. She remained still, savoring the moment of connection until the stallion slowly withdrew, retreating to the safety of his corner. Long after Jackson and the others had disappeared, Maya lingered, simply watching Thunder. There was something familiar in those dark eyes, a wariness that came from betrayal, from learning that the world wasn't safe. She knew that feeling intimately. Dawn had barely broken when Maya began the 5-kilometer walk to Blackwell Ranch the next morning. The horizon glowed amber and pink as her boots kicked up dust on the country road. Her old guitar bounced against her back with each step, its weathered case held together with duct tape and hope. In her backpack, she carried a few apples and carrots, alongside a worn book on equine behavior borrowed from the town's tiny library. The air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and mesquite. Maya's mind wandered to the last conversation with her mother, Sarah, the only foster parent who had shown her genuine love. "Some hearts can hear what can't be heard with ears," Sarah had told her, watching teenage Maya calm a neighbor's panicked horse during a thunderstorm. "That's a rare gift, Nina. Don't let anyone tell you it's not real." Sarah had died 3 years later, cancer taking her swiftly and cruelly. Maya had been 18, suddenly alone again, but with Sarah's guitar and her unwavering belief in Maya's special connection with animals. When Maya arrived at the stables, Frank Miller was already waiting, arms crossed over his broad chest, skepticism etched into every line of his weathered face. "Going to sing the horse to sleep, Mexicanita?" he sneered, eyeing the guitar case. Maya met his gaze steadily. "Music speaks when words fail, Mr. Miller." "Horse training isn't a poetry reading," Frank scoffed. "It's about establishing dominance. But go ahead. Waste Blackwell's time. When you fail, I'll be ready with real methods." He unlocked Thunder's stall area, standing well back from the door. "Don't expect sympathy when you get hurt. I warned everyone this approach is foolish." Maya said nothing, walking past him to the row of stalls. She chose a spot opposite Thunder's enclosure, settling on an overturned feed bucket about 15 feet from the bars. The stallion watched her from the far corner of his stall, ears alert but body tense. For nearly an hour, Maya simply sat there, occasionally glancing at Thunder but mostly reading her book or writing in a small notebook. She made no attempt to approach him, respecting his space and allowing him to observe her from a distance he found comfortable. Several ranch hands passed by, some snickering at the sight of the cleaning girl just sitting there, apparently doing nothing. One whispered loudly to another. Blackwell's finally lost his mind, paying her to stare at a horse. Around mid-morning, Maya quietly opened her guitar case. Thunder's ears immediately pricked forward at the sound, his attention fully captured. She began tuning the instrument, each note hanging in the quiet air of the stable. "My mother taught me this song," Maya said softly, not looking directly at Thunder. "My birth mother, I mean. I was only 5 when she died, but I remember her singing this while she worked." Her fingers moved across the strings, creating a gentle melody that echoed softly through the stable. The song was a traditional Mexican lullaby, its notes carrying the warmth of generations who had sung it before her. As Maya sang in a low, sweet voice, tears formed silently in her eyes. She rarely allowed herself to remember her parents, the pain of their loss still sharp despite the years. But now, she let the memories surface. Her mother's gentle hands, her father's deep laugh, the journey that had claimed their lives when she was 7. Thunder's response was subtle, but unmistakable. The tension in his powerful body eased slightly. His breathing slowed. Though he remained in his corner, his posture shifted from defensive to attentive. Jason Tucker, passing by on his morning rounds, stopped in his tracks at the unusual scene. He watched silently as Maya continued playing, her eyes closed, her voice carrying emotions too complex for words. More surprising was Thunder's reaction. The aggressive stallion that had nearly trampled 3 handlers was standing quietly, listening. When Maya finished the song, she didn't immediately begin another. She simply sat with the silence that followed, letting it speak its own language. After a while, she took an apple from her bag, cut it with a small knife, and placed a piece on the ground midway between herself and Thunder's stall. "No pressure," she said quietly. "It's just there if you want it." Jason approached cautiously after she'd put the guitar away. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked, genuinely curious rather than mocking. "Building a relationship," Maya replied, packing her things. "It starts with respect. But you're not even trying to touch him or enter the stall. Would you immediately trust someone who invaded your space after you'd been traumatized?" Maya asked. "He needs to know I respect his boundaries before he can trust my intentions." That evening, in Jackson Blackwell's opulent office, Frank Miller expressed his frustration in no uncertain terms. "This is a complete waste of time and money," he insisted, pacing before Jackson's massive oak desk. "The girl just sat there all day, playing guitar and leaving apple pieces on the floor. This isn't horse training, it's hippie nonsense." Jackson swiveled in his leather chair to face the bank of monitors showing security footage from the stables. "And yet," he mused, "Thunder didn't try to kill her. That's more progress than you've made in a week, Miller." "Given enough time, I could have that horse under control," Frank argued. "My methods work. They've always worked." "Your methods put my investment at risk," Jackson countered coldly. "Every trainer who's tried to break him has ended up in the hospital. The girl's approach costs me nothing but time. And time I have. Let's see what happens." Maya returned before dawn the next day. This time, she brought a small stool and set it closer to Thunder's stall. The stallion acknowledged her arrival with a soft, nickering sound. Not friendly yet, but recognition. Again, she read aloud for a while, this time from a novel about the American West. Later, she played more music, interspersing songs with quiet conversation. "I was 7 when I lost my parents," she told Thunder, cutting carrots into small pieces and placing them closer to the stall than yesterday's offering. "They wanted to give me a better life, so they tried to cross the border. There was a storm in the river." She paused, the knife still in her hand. Everyone said I should be grateful I was born on this side, that I was a citizen, but all I felt was alone. Thunder moved slightly closer to the front of his stall, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of the carrots. Foster homes are like different stalls, Maya continued. Some better than others, but none of them really yours. You learn to be quiet, to watch for signs of danger, to protect yourself because no one else will. As Maya spoke, several Latino workers lingered nearby, ostensibly checking equipment but actually listening. One older man, Miguel, who maintained the tack room, nodded subtly at her words. On the third day, Maya arrived to find a small group of ranch hands gathered at a discreet distance, watching. Word had spread about the chica with the gift, and curiosity had overcome skepticism for some. This morning, Thunder was waiting at the front of his stall, ears forward in anticipation. Maya smiled but didn't comment on this progress, knowing that acknowledging it too directly might create pressure. She set her stool even closer today and began their now familiar routine. After playing music and reading, she held out a carrot piece in her open palm, extending her arm toward the stall but not entering Thunder's space. The stable fell silent. Even the skeptics held their breath. Thunder stretched his neck toward the offering, nostrils widening as he took in Maya's scent along with the carrots. For a long moment he seemed to be making a profound decision. Then, with delicate precision, he took the carrot from her palm, his lips brushing against her skin with velvet softness. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Miguel crossed himself and whispered, "Milagro." Maya remained still, allowing Thunder to retreat with his prize, respecting that this massive step deserved space and acknowledgement. When she finally looked up, she saw Jackson Blackwell observing from the stable entrance, his expression unreadable. The breakthrough was shattered moments later when Frank Miller stormed into the stable, voice raised in frustration as he argued with another trainer about equipment. "We need the stronger bits for the new Colts. I don't care what Jason said about waiting." The sudden loud noise and aggressive energy sent Thunder retreating to the back of his stall, head high and nostrils flared in alarm. Frank noticed the gathered crowd and Maya's position near Thunder's stall. "Well, well, the audience for the magic show is growing. Has she made him disappear yet?" he sneered. "She got him to take food from her hand," one of the younger hands said, impressed despite himself. Frank snorted. "Taking carrots doesn't make him rideable. It makes him a pet. Blackwell didn't spend a fortune on a pet." Maya stood slowly, facing Frank. "There's a difference between trust and fear, Mr. Miller. A horse that trusts you will do things a frightened horse never can." "Horses need to know who's boss," Frank retorted, his voice rising. "Respect comes from establishing dominance. That's how it's always been done. Maybe that's why so many horses end up broken in spirit as well as body," Maya responded quietly. Their exchange grew heated, Frank's voice becoming louder as he defended traditional methods, Maya remaining calm but firm in her conviction that fear-based training caused more problems than it solved. In his stall, Thunder grew increasingly agitated, pawing at the ground and tossing his head as the conflict escalated. His anxiety was palpable, building with each sharp word exchanged. Noticing Thunder's distress, Maya abruptly stopped arguing. She reached for her guitar and began to play, her fingers finding the strings of a gentle melody that contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. The effect on Thunder was immediate and striking. His pawing slowed, then stopped. His head lowered slightly, ears swiveling to catch the music. Within minutes, his breathing had steadied, the panic in his eyes replaced by the now familiar attentiveness. Frank fell silent mid-sentence, watching the transformation with reluctant fascination. The ranch hands exchanged glances, the evidence before them too clear to dismiss. Unknown to those in the stable, Jackson Blackwell was observing everything through the security monitors in his office, taking careful notes and making calculations that had nothing to do with sentimentality and everything to do with potential profit. That evening, as Maya packed her guitar and prepared to leave, she spoke softly to Thunder. "See you tomorrow, friend. We're making progress." As she turned to go, she found Carter Blackwell leaning against the stable entrance, slowly applauding with exaggerated mockery. "Impressive circus trick, Rodriguez. But my father isn't investing in a pet. He wants a rodeo champion. And for that, you'll need a lot more than pretty songs and feelings." Maya held Carter's mocking gaze, refusing to show the slightest hint of intimidation despite the heat rising in her cheeks. Her grandmother had taught her long ago that dignity was sometimes the only possession no one could take from you. "Fear can make a horse obey, Mr. Blackwell," she said quietly, "but only trust makes him want to work with you." Carter's smirk faltered slightly, clearly expecting her to cower or retreat. When she didn't, he straightened his designer jacket with affected nonchalance. "Well, we'll see how far trust gets you when my father expects a champion, not a petting zoo attraction." He turned on his heel, boots clicking sharply against the concrete floor as he left. Behind Maya, Thunder nickered softly, as if offering support. She turned back to the magnificent stallion, now standing closer to the front of his stall than ever before. "Don't worry about him," she whispered. "Some people mistake cruelty for strength." The following evening, Maya pushed open the door to La Paloma, the small Mexican restaurant where her friend Elena worked. The modest establishment sat on the outskirts of Sweetwater, its faded exterior belying the authenticity of the food served within. The rich aromas of cumin, chilies, and fresh tortillas enveloped her as she entered. Elena, a petite woman with a quick smile and quicker wit, spotted Maya immediately. "Mírenla, the horse whisperer has arrived," she called out, drawing the attention of several patrons who turned with evident interest. Maya slid into a corner booth, suddenly aware of the eyes upon her. "Please don't call me that," she murmured as Elena approached with a glass of water and a knowing smile. "Too late, amiga. Everyone's talking about the miracle at Blackwell Ranch." Elena set down a plate of enchiladas Maya hadn't ordered, but desperately needed. "On the house. You look exhausted." As Maya ate, the restaurant's Latino patrons approached one by one, ranch hands, mechanics, housekeepers, each with a question or comment about El Caballo del Diablo and how she had tamed him. "I haven't tamed anything," Maya explained repeatedly. "We're just getting to know each other." Miguel, the elderly ferrador who had been shoeing horses in the county for over 50 years, settled heavily into the seat across from her. His face, weathered as old leather, creased with wisdom as he leaned forward. "My grandfather worked with horses that survived the revolution," he said in Spanish. "Animals that had seen gunfire, death, chaos. He never used a whip, never used spurs. He said, 'Horses carry the memories of terror in their bodies. You must help them release these ghosts before they can trust again.'" Maya nodded, grateful for the validation. Thunder saw his trainer die. The memory lives in his muscles, in his reactions. Miguel tapped his temple. "The old ways understand this, but the cowboy way..." He made a dismissive gesture. "They want results tomorrow, not healing that lasts a lifetime." Back in her trailer that night, Maya studied by candlelight, saving electricity to make her meager paycheck stretch further. She pored over books about equine psychology, trauma responses, and training methodologies, making notes in a worn journal. The candle cast flickering shadows across pages describing how horses, as prey animals, carried trauma differently than predator species like humans. "Their survival depends on recognizing threats," she read aloud, underlining the passage. "A traumatized horse isn't being difficult. He's trying to stay alive." At dawn the next morning, Maya arrived at the Blackwell Ranch to find Jason waiting for her. "Boss wants to see the security footage from yesterday," he explained, walking alongside her toward the stables. "Some of the investors were impressed with Thunder taking food from your hand." Maya raised an eyebrow. "He's showing investors?" Jason nodded. "Blackwell sees dollar signs in everything. If your approach works, he'll find a way to market it." Inside the cool darkness of the stable, Thunder greeted Maya with a soft whicker that made Jason's eyes widen. "He's actually looking forward to seeing you," he said, surprised. "Yesterday he nearly took my arm off when I brought his feed." "He's selective about his friends," Maya replied with a small smile. Can't blame him. Today marked a significant step in her gradual approach. After their usual routine of music and quiet conversation, Maya carefully opened the stall door for the first time, stepping just inside the threshold before sitting cross-legged on the clean straw. Thunder retreated to the far corner, watching her with cautious attention. Instead of trying to approach him, Maya simply pulled a book from her backpack and began reading aloud, a novel about wild horses in Wyoming. Her voice remained steady and soothing as she turned the pages, never looking directly at Thunder but always aware of his every shift and movement. An hour passed this way, the only sounds in the stall being Maya's gentle voice and Thunder's occasional soft exhales. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the distance between them shortened as the stallion's curiosity overcame his caution. He took one careful step forward, then another, drawn not by treats or coercion, but by simple, patient companionship. In Jackson Blackwell's office, the security monitors displayed this quiet scene. Several investors in expensive suits watched with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. "This is what we're waiting for?" one man asked, checking his Rolex impatiently. "A read-along with a horse?" "Patience, gentlemen," Jackson replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. "What you're witnessing is potentially more valuable than conventional training. If this method works, we could revolutionize how problem horses are handled and monetize it accordingly." Frank Miller stood stiffly in the corner, arms folded across his chest. "The rodeo circuit starts in 8 weeks, Mr. Blackwell. Reading books won't prepare that horse for the arena." Jackson swiveled in his chair. "Then perhaps we need to accelerate things." He reached for the intercom. "Jason, inform Miss Rodriguez that Thunder has been officially entered in the Sweetwater Grand Rodeo. She has exactly 8 weeks to make him competition ready." Back in the stall, Maya was experiencing a breakthrough. Thunder had approached close enough that she could smell his distinctive scent, a mixture of hay, earth, and something uniquely him. He lowered his magnificent head, nostrils flaring as he investigated her hair with gentle curiosity. Maya remained perfectly still, her heart racing but her body calm. This moment of voluntary connection meant more than any forced submission ever could. The spell was broken by Jason's voice calling from outside. When Maya heard the news about the rodeo deadline, her stomach knotted with anxiety. 8 weeks was nothing in terms of trauma recovery, especially for an animal that would need to face crowds, noise, and the intense stimulation of competition. "Mr. Blackwell doesn't understand," she told Jason, exiting Thunder's stall with reluctance. "Healing doesn't follow a convenient schedule." "It's not about healing for him," Jason replied quietly. "It's about return on investment." That evening, dark clouds gathered over Sweetwater, the air heavy with imminent rain. Maya remained in Thunder's stall later than usual, concerned about how he might react to the coming storm. Her instincts proved correct when the first distant rumble of thunder caused the stallion to freeze, eyes widening in terror. "It's okay," she soothed, setting aside the brush she'd been using to familiarize him with gentle touch. "Just a storm, nothing to fear." But as lightning flashed and thunder crashed overhead, terrible memories clearly flooded Thunder's mind. His traumatized brain connected the sound to the crash of the trailer, the terrible moment when his trainer was crushed before his eyes. He began to pace frantically, sweat darkening his black coat. Maya began to sing softly, trying to provide an anchor amid his rising panic. But when a particularly violent thunderclap shook the stable, Thunder reared in blind terror, powerful forelegs pawing the air. Maya couldn't move quickly enough. One hoof caught her shoulder, sending her crashing against the stall wall. Pain exploded through her side as she crumpled to the straw-covered floor. Outside the stall, voices shouted in alarm. "Get her out of there," someone yelled. "That crazy horse will kill her." But Maya, though dazed and hurting, refused to leave. Instead, she remained on the ground, making herself small and unthreatening while continuing to sing through gritted teeth. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, but her voice never wavered. "No tengas miedo," she whispered. "I'm still here. I won't leave you." For agonizing minutes, Thunder continued his panicked movements, But something in Maya's continued presence, her refusal to flee despite being hurt, gradually penetrated his fear. His circling slowed, his breathing still rapid but no longer frantic. Outside, ranch hands had gathered with ropes and prods, ready to forcibly subdue the stallion, but Jason held them back. "Wait," he ordered, watching in astonishment as Thunder's panic subsided by increments. Maya remained motionless on the floor, her voice growing weaker but never stopping. Eventually, Thunder approached her cautious step by cautious step, lowering his head to investigate this human who hadn't abandoned him despite the danger. To the amazement of everyone watching, the massive stallion lowered himself partially to the ground beside Maya, not quite lying down but positioning himself as if to shield her from further harm. He nickered softly, nosing at her injured arm with surprising gentleness. "They're protecting each other," Jason murmured in disbelief. When the medical team arrived, they had to navigate not just an injured woman, but a 1,000-pound stallion that refused to leave her side. Only when Maya herself whispered reassurances did Thunder reluctantly allow the paramedics to help her to her feet and out of the stall. The next morning, despite her bandaged arm and bruised ribs, Maya returned to the ranch. Her determined stride belied the pain evident in her tight expression. As she approached the stables, Frank Miller intercepted her path. "Blackwell was impressed with your dedication yesterday," he said, his tone making the words sound anything but complimentary. "But not with the results. He authorized me to take over if you can't get a saddle on that beast by the end of the week." His eyes lingered on her injuries with something like satisfaction. "My methods guarantee quick results, even if they leave a few scars." Frank Miller's threat hung in the air between them, as tangible as the morning mist rising from the pastures. Maya's ribs throbbed with each breath, but she kept her expression neutral, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her pain. "I understand your methods work quickly, Mr. Miller," she said quietly. "But have you considered that quick isn't always lasting?" Frank's weathered face hardened. "In Rodeo, there's no time for your kumbaya approach. That horse needs discipline, not therapy." Maya walked past him toward Thunder's stall, wincing slightly as her bruised body protested each step. The events of the previous night had left their mark, not just on her body, but on her relationship with Thunder. Being injured by him could have destroyed the fragile trust they'd built, yet somehow, it seemed to have deepened their connection. When she reached his stall, Thunder was waiting at the front, ears pricked forward in recognition. His dark eyes studied her bandaged arm, and he nickered softly, almost apologetically. "Good morning to you too," Maya said with a gentle smile. "Don't worry about last night. I know you didn't mean it." She examined her injured arm, considering the challenge Frank had presented. A saddle by the end of the week, an impossible timeline for a horse who had barely accepted human touch. Traditional methods would force compliance through fear, but Maya knew that approach would only drive Thunder's trauma deeper. "We need a different way," she murmured, thinking aloud. In her trailer that evening, Maya spread several colorful silk scarves across her small table. They had belonged to Sarah, relics from her foster mother's more carefree days. Maya ran her fingers over the soft fabric, remembering how Sarah would dance to old records, scarves flowing around her like colorful streams of water. "The secret to healing," Sarah had once told her, "is making the unfamiliar familiar." The next morning, Maya arrived at the stables with the scarves tucked into her backpack. She began as usual, playing guitar and talking softly to Thunder, who seemed especially attentive, perhaps sensing her discomfort from the injuries he'd unintentionally caused. "Today we try something new," she explained, drawing out a red silk scarf. She tied it loosely around her own wrist, letting Thunder see it, smell it, understand it was nothing to fear. Then she hung it on the stall door, allowing it to flutter gently in the morning breeze. Thunder regarded the scarf with suspicion at first, ears flickering back and forth as he assessed this new element in his environment. But as the hours passed and the scarf remained harmlessly dancing in the air, his curiosity overcame caution. By afternoon, he would occasionally stretch his neck to sniff at the colorful fabric. "You're introducing textiles," observed a deep, accented voice from behind her. Maya turned to find a man in a wheelchair watching her with intelligent eyes. His weathered brown face spoke of indigenous and Mexican heritage, and though his body appeared broken, his presence commanded respect. "Diego Ramirez," he introduced himself, wheeling closer. "I hear you're the miracle worker with the devil horse." "No miracles," Maya replied. "Just patience. And he's not a devil, just scared." Diego's laugh was a rich, unexpected sound. "That's what I told them about me after my accident. Not broken, just recalibrated." His eyes traveled to Thunder, who watched them curiously from inside the stall. "I was a horse trainer before this," he gestured to his wheelchair. 15 years on the circuit until a bronc named Tornado decided I needed a career change." In his eyes, Maya recognized the same quiet understanding she aspired to, knowledge earned through experience rather than domination. "The scarves are smart," Diego continued, nodding at her technique. "The texture, movement, color, all new experiences without threat. You're desensitizing him systematically." "I'm trying to build a bridge," Maya explained, "from what's familiar to what's frightening." Diego wheeled closer to the stall, keeping a respectful distance. "Mind if I observe for a few days? Been a while since I've seen someone work without spurs and fear." The next morning, Maya arrived to find Diego already waiting, a thermos of coffee balanced on his lap. Together, they developed a methodical approach. First the scarves, then lightweight blankets, building gradually toward the weight and feel of a saddle. "The problem isn't the saddle itself," Diego explained as they shared lunch outside Thunder's stall. "It's what it represents." For him, equipment equals pain, restriction, loss of control. Maya nodded. "Like the foster system. It wasn't the different houses that were scary. It was never knowing when control would be taken away again." Diego's eyes reflected understanding. "We carry our histories in our bodies. Horses just can't hide it like people do." Their progress was steady but fragile. Thunder allowed Maya to drape the silk scarves over his back, then thin blankets. Each day built upon the previous, a careful architecture of trust. But not everyone appreciated their methods. One morning, Maya found Thunder agitated and unfed, his water bucket empty. Carter ordered schedule changes, Jason explained apologetically when she confronted him. Said routine makes horses soft. Later that day, as Maya worked with Thunder in his stall, Carter appeared at the door. "Look at you playing dress-up," he mocked, eyeing the colorful scarf Maya was gently passing over Thunder's flanks. "My father's not paying for a fashion show. Your father's paying for results," Maya replied evenly. "And we're making progress." "Progress? Ha! He still looks like an oversized dog toy to me." Carter deliberately jangled his keys loudly, smirking when Thunder startled at the sudden noise. After he left, Maya had to spend an hour calming Thunder back to his previous state. Diego, who had witnessed the exchange, shook his head grimly. "He's sabotaging you," he observed. "Be careful. Men like that don't fight fair when they feel threatened." Despite the obstacles, their work continued. Each day brought small victories, Thunder accepting a saddle pad on his back, allowing Maya to touch increasingly sensitive areas, standing calmly while she introduced new elements. The breakthrough came unexpectedly on a quiet afternoon. After their usual routine, Maya was sitting in Thunder's stall, recounting stories from her childhood while gently passing a light blanket over his powerful shoulders. Thunder, who had grown accustomed to this ritual, suddenly lowered his head and took a step closer to Maya. Then, with a gentle deliberateness that brought tears to her eyes, he rested his muzzle against her injured arm, his breath warm through the bandage. "He's apologizing," Diego whispered from outside the stall, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I've only seen that once before." The moment was captured by Jason on his phone, a silent record of something profound transpiring between human and horse. When he showed the image to Miguel and other Latino workers that evening, the old ferrador nodded knowingly. "La conexión verdadera," he murmured. "The true connection." The next day brought an unwelcome development. Jackson Blackwell arrived at the stables accompanied by a professional film crew and several journalists. "There she is," he announced grandly as cameras swung toward a startled Maya. "The Hoarse Whisperer of Sweetwater. We're documenting your remarkable journey with Thunder for a special feature." Thunder, who had been calmly accepting a saddle pad on his back, immediately tensed at the intrusion of strangers with equipment. His eyes widened, nostrils flared, and in seconds the morning's progress evaporated as he retreated to the far corner of his stall. "Mr. Blackwell," Maya protested, stepping between the cameras and Thunder's stall. "Please, this isn't helping. Thunder needs calm and consistency." "The public loves an underdog story," Blackwell continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "The Mexican girl with the magic touch. Think of the publicity for the ranch and the rodeo." "He's not a spectacle," Maya insisted, her voice rising despite her usual restraint. "He's a living being trying to overcome trauma." Blackwell's smile cooled several degrees. "He's an investment, Miss Rodriguez, and investments need to generate returns." The film crew remained for hours, their lights, microphones, and constant movement creating an environment of stress that undid days of careful progress. Thunder refused to approach Maya while the strangers were present, his body language screaming distress and confusion. That night, long after the crew had left, Maya returned to the stables alone. She found Thunder still agitated, pacing his stall. "I know," she whispered, settling on her stool outside his door. "They don't understand what it's like to be on display, to be seen as a curiosity instead of a being." She picked up her guitar, finding comfort in the familiar curves of the instrument. "My first foster home used to show me off at church like I was some kind of rescue project. Look at our little Mexican orphan. They'd make me wear dresses with big bows and patent leather shoes that pinched my feet." Thunder stopped pacing, his attention caught by her voice and the gentle strumming. "We're not so different, you and I," Maya continued. "Both of us expected to perform for others' expectations." Working late into the night, in the quiet sanctuary after the cameras had gone, Maya was finally able to place a light training saddle on Thunder's back. She didn't cinch it tight. That would come later. But the mere acceptance of the saddle was a milestone that had seemed impossible days earlier. The next morning, Frank Miller observed from a distance as Maya demonstrated their progress, showing how Thunder now accepted the saddle without fear. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly, "but useless. A rodeo horse needs to handle a lot more than that." "One step at a time, Mr. Miller," Maya replied. "Trust is built in small moments, not grand gestures." Later that afternoon, Jackson Blackwell gathered the stable staff for an announcement. "Thanks to Miss Rodriguez's unexpected success with Thunder, I've decided to feature them as the main attraction at the Grand Rodeo. The Miracle of Sweetwater will be our headliner." Maya felt her stomach sink. "Mr. Blackwell, Thunder isn't ready for that kind of exposure. We've barely—" "Details can be worked out later," Blackwell interrupted with a dismissive wave. "The marketing team is already designing the promotional materials. This will put Sweetwater on the map." That evening, Maya trudged wearily back to her trailer, the weight of the day heavy on her shoulders. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for Thunder's well-being against those who saw him only as entertainment or investment. As she approached her trailer, she noticed an envelope taped to her door, the Blackwell Ranch logo emblazoned on the corner. Inside was a formal contract from Blackwell Enterprises, offering her a substantial salary as their official trainer, and in fine print, transferring all rights to her training methods and Thunder's story to the company, along with requiring her to follow presentation guidelines to maximize the commercial appeal of the spectacle. Maya stared at the contract in her trailer, the official Blackwell Enterprises letterhead gleaming under the single overhead bulb. The salary figure made her breath catch. More money than she'd ever seen, enough to put a down payment on that small piece of land she'd been dreaming about for years. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned to the second page, then the third, her initial excitement giving way to a growing unease as she digested the fine print. The presentation guidelines were extensive and troubling. Thunder would be required to perform specific crowd-pleasing maneuvers, regardless of his readiness. The language authorized industry-standard equipment, which she knew meant the severe bits and spurs that Frank Miller favored. Most disturbing was the clause giving Blackwell Enterprises full creative control over training methodology and presentation style. Maya's modest table was crowded with the contract, her meager dinner of beans and tortillas pushed to the side, forgotten. Outside, the Texas night hummed with insects, a distant coyote's cry punctuating the darkness. She read the pages again, searching for flexibility that wasn't there. "They want me to sell my soul," she murmured to the empty trailer, and Thunder's trust along with it. Sleep eluded her that night. By dawn, she had already called Elena, arranging to meet at La Paloma during the lunch break. The morning session with Thunder was distracted, her mind repeatedly drifting to the contract waiting for her signature. Thunder sensed her unease, his own progress hesitant as he picked up on her divided attention. "I'm sorry," she told him, stroking his neck gently. "I'm not being fair to you today." When she arrived at La Paloma, Elena was already at their usual corner booth, Diego's wheelchair positioned at the end. The restaurant was quiet during the afternoon lull, giving them privacy to speak freely. $200 a week, Elena gasped when Maya mentioned the figure. "Dios mío, that's more than I make in 2 weeks here." "It's not about the money," Maya insisted, pushing the contract across the table. "Look at what they want in return." Diego adjusted his glasses, his expression darkening as he read. "This isn't a job offer," he said finally. "It's ownership papers. For you, not just the horse." "But it's your chance to escape poverty," Elena argued, her practical nature asserting itself. "You've lived in that trailer for years, saving every penny." "At what cost?" Diego countered before Maya could respond. "They're asking her to betray everything she believes about how animals should be treated." Maya sipped her water, the ice clinking against the glass matching the cold feeling in her stomach. "If I sign, I'm agreeing that Thunder is just a commodity to be exploited. If I don't, they'll give him to Frank Miller," Diego finished grimly. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Carter Blackwell, who sauntered into La Paloma with the entitled confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. He nodded curtly to their table before taking a seat at the bar, his expensive boots and crisp shirt making him stand out among the restaurant's usual clientele. Elena leaned forward, lowering her voice. "He never comes here. He must be checking if you're discussing the contract." Maya watched as Carter ordered, his Spanish awkward but demanding. The knowledge that he was monitoring her decision only strengthened her resolve. Later that afternoon, Frank Miller and Carter huddled together near the tack room, their hushed conversation pausing abruptly when Maya passed. She caught only fragments, backup plan, and traditional methods, but their meaning was clear enough. They were preparing for her refusal. The next morning, Maya requested a meeting with Jackson Blackwell to discuss the contract. The ranch owner's office was intimidating in its calculated display of wealth, custom leather furniture, championship rodeo trophies, and a massive desk of polished mesquite wood that separated him from visitors like a fortress wall. "I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Blackwell," Maya began, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. "But I have concerns about some of the terms." Jackson leaned back in his chair, expression neutral but eyes sharp. "Such as?" "The presentation guidelines, the equipment requirements. Thunder isn't ready for severe bits or spurs. He may never be. His trust is too fragile." "Miss Rodriguez," Jackson replied, his tone cooling. "I understand you've developed a connection with the animal. That's commendable. But let's not forget the fundamental reality here. Thunder is my property, not yours." "I understand that, sir. I'm just asking for modifications to ensure his well-being isn't compromised." Jackson's laugh held no warmth. "His well-being? He's a horse, not a therapy patient. I paid $200,000 for a champion rodeo prospect, not a pet project." "I can accept the lower salary," Maya pressed on, determined, "but I can't compromise Thunder's welfare." Jackson stood abruptly, signaling the end of the meeting. "Don't mistake your position here, Miss Rodriguez. You clean stables. I own them. Thunder is my investment, not your friend. Frank Miller has trained champions for 20 years. You're easily replaced." The words hit Maya like physical blows, but she maintained her composure as she rose to leave. At the door, she turned back. "Some values don't have a price, Mr. Blackwell. Thunder's trust is one of them." She returned to her trailer that evening and laid the unsigned contract on her small table. With trembling fingers, she picked up a pen, but instead of signing, she wrote across the top in clear letters, "I respectfully decline." The next morning, she returned the document to Jackson's office, leaving it with his secretary. By afternoon, the consequences were swift and severe. When Maya arrived at the stables for her usual session, security guards blocked her path. "Sorry, Miss Rodriguez. Mr. Blackwell says you're no longer authorized to access this area." Through the open stable doors, she could see Frank Miller and 2 assistants entering Thunder's stall, carrying the very equipment she had refused to use, a severe bit with long shanks, spurs with sharp rowels, and a riding crop. "Please," she begged the impassive guards. "You don't understand what this will do to him. We've spent weeks building trust." From inside, she heard Thunder's frightened neigh, followed by the sharp commands of the trainers. Her protests grew more desperate as the sounds of struggle intensified. Hooves striking wood, men shouting, the unmistakable crack of a whip. "You're destroying everything we've built," she cried as the guards escorted her firmly toward the property entrance. Thunder's distressed whinnies followed her, each one feeling like a personal betrayal. That evening, the Latino community gathered at La Paloma, the restaurant staying open past closing time to accommodate the impromptu meeting. Word had spread quickly about Maya's firing and the return to harsh training methods for Thunder. "She chose integrity over money," Elena explained proudly to the assembled group of ranch hands, housekeepers, and service workers. "When was the last time any of us saw someone stand up to the Blackwells like that?" Miguel, the old ferrador, nodded solemnly. "The horse will suffer now. I have seen what Frank Miller does to difficult animals. He breaks their spirit to control their body." The following days were agony for Maya. Cut off from Thunder and her work, she took extra cleaning jobs at neighboring ranches, but her heart wasn't in it. Each night, she lay awake worrying about Thunder's treatment, imagining his confusion and fear as the humans he had finally begun to trust again betrayed that fragile connection. On the 3rd evening after her dismissal, Jason sought her out at her trailer. His expression was grave as he settled into the single chair she offered. "It's bad," he said without preamble. "The horse isn't eating. He attacked Frank yesterday, nearly broke his arm when they tried to force the bit into his mouth." Maya's heart clenched. "Is Thunder okay?" Jason shook his head. "They've got him restrained with cross ties. He can barely move his head. Frank says it's the only way to show him who's boss. They're using water deprivation as discipline now, too." "That's abuse," Maya whispered, horror spreading through her. "Blackwell doesn't care as long as he gets results. The rodeo deadline is coming up fast." Desperate to see Thunder, Maya attempted to enter the Blackwell property after dark that night, scaling the fence at a remote section of the perimeter. She had nearly reached the stables when security lights flooded the area, and 2 guards intercepted her. "This is private property," one warned, gripping her arm roughly. "Next time we call the sheriff and you'll be facing trespassing charges." The following evening, Jason appeared at her trailer again, this time with more urgent news. "The horse hasn't eaten in 2 days now. He injured Frank pretty badly this morning, kicked him into the wall when he tried to saddle him. Now they've got him tied up in the stall. He can't even lie down, Maya." Rain began to fall as Jason spoke, gentle at first but quickly intensifying into a downpour that drummed against the trailer roof. Thunder had always been frightened of storms. The sound of thunder triggered his traumatic memories of the trailer accident. The thought of him restrained during such terror was unbearable. "I have to see him," Maya decided, pulling on her raincoat. "The storm will distract the guards. Will you help me?" Jason hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'll leave the back entrance unlocked. But if you're caught, I know the risks." The storm provided perfect cover as Maya slipped onto the property, rain obscuring visibility and masking the sound of her movements. Lightning flashed overhead as she made her way to the stables, illuminating the buildings in brief, ghostly tableaus. The back door was unlocked as promised, and she slipped inside, water streaming from her coat onto the concrete floor. The stables were dimly lit, most of the horses unsettled by the storm. Maya moved silently past stalls until she reached Thunder's at the far end. What she saw made her gasp in horror. The magnificent stallion was indeed bound with short ropes to rings on either side of the stall, preventing him from lowering his head more than a few inches or lying down to rest. His coat, once gleaming with health, was dull and marked with ugly welts where the whip had struck. His eyes, when they found hers in the dim light, held a mixture of fear, anger, and, most heartbreaking of all, betrayal. "Oh, Thunder," Maya whispered, tears mixing with the rainwater on her face. "What have they done to you?" She quickly entered the stall, her hands gentle as she examined the ropes binding him. Thunder's muscles trembled beneath her touch, but he made no move to pull away or strike out. Despite everything, he remembered her. "I'm so sorry I left you," she murmured, working to loosen the cruel restraints. "I swore no one would hurt you again, and I failed." As she freed the first rope, the stable door crashed open behind her. Light flooded the space as Carter Blackwell stepped in, flanked by armed security guards. "Well, well," he drawled, satisfaction evident in his tone. "Breaking and entering, attempted theft of valuable property. Looks like you'll be spending a long time in jail, Miss Rodriguez. Long enough for us to completely forget about you before the Grand Rodeo." Maya stared at Carter Blackwell and the armed guards, her heart hammering against her ribs. Thunder shifted nervously behind her, his breath warm on her shoulder, a silent reminder of what was at stake. "Step away from the horse, Miss Rodriguez," Carter ordered, his voice echoing in the quiet stable. "The sheriff is already on his way." The county jail in Sweetwater was a small, drab building with concrete walls and the lingering smell of disinfectant that failed to mask years of despair. Maya sat on a thin mattress in a holding cell, her damp clothes clinging uncomfortably to her skin. The charge sheet read trespassing, attempted theft of livestock, and property damage, all felonies that carried serious jail time in Texas. Morning brought the harsh fluorescent lights of the booking area and the unsympathetic gaze of Sheriff Donovan, a longtime ally of the Blackwell family. "Breaking into private property to steal a $200,000 horse," he said, shaking his head as he processed her paperwork. "I knew you Mexicans were bold, but this takes the cake." "I wasn't stealing him," Maya protested, her voice hoarse from a sleepless night. "I was trying to help him. They're abusing that animal." The sheriff's laugh was dry and humorless. "Save it for the judge, sweetheart. The Blackwell's word against yours. Guess who wins that contest in this county?" Her bail was set at $25,000, an impossible sum that might as well have been $1 million. Maya resigned herself to waiting in jail until her court date, possibly weeks away. The thought of Thunder enduring continued abuse while she sat helpless behind bars made her physically ill. On the second afternoon of her confinement, Maya was summoned to the visitor area. Expecting Elena or perhaps Diego, she was stunned to find herself facing an elegant woman in her 50s, whose piercing blue eyes and confident bearing commanded immediate respect despite her simple attire. "You don't know me," the woman said, studying Maya with frank assessment. "My name is Catherine Blackwell." Maya's surprise must have shown on her face because Catherine's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. Yes, that Blackwell, Jackson's ex-wife, and perhaps the only thing he genuinely fears in this world. Catherine had left the family 15 years earlier after a bitter divorce that had divided the community. The reason for their split had been carefully managed in public, but Catherine wasted no time clarifying. "I left because Jackson's methods with animals were cruel then, and from what I've heard, they haven't improved," she explained as they sat at a scarred visitation table. "When news reached me about a Mexican girl arrested for trying to save a traumatized stallion from Jackson's trainers, I knew I had to come." "How did you hear about this?" Maya asked, bewildered. "I run the Texas Equine Protection Alliance in Austin now. We have sources in every county watching for abuse cases," Catherine replied. "I've been following your work with Thunder from afar. What you've accomplished with that horse in such a short time is remarkable." Within hours, Catherine had paid Maya's bail and secured a prominent animal rights attorney to represent her, As they drove away from the jail in Catherine's modest sedan, Maya struggled to process this unexpected turn of events. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked as they passed the Sweetwater city limits sign. Catherine kept her eyes on the road, her profile regal against the setting sun. 15 years ago, I found Jackson's prize stallion bleeding from spur wounds after a training session. When I confronted him, he said it was the price of greatness. I left the next day, but I've regretted not doing more to stop his methods. She glanced briefly at Maya. "Perhaps you're my second chance." At Catherine's hotel suite, they strategized with the attorney. Without hard evidence of abuse, Maya's case remained precarious, and Thunder's situation dire. "We need documentation," the lawyer advised. "Photos, videos, veterinary assessments, anything that proves the methods being used are abusive rather than standard training practices." Back at the Blackwell Ranch, Thunder's condition deteriorated further. Jason, risking his job to help, sent Maya text updates that grew increasingly alarming. "Frank's in hospital with 3 broken ribs," one message read. "Thunder kicked him when he tried electroshock training. They've got him in complete isolation now." Later came worse news. "They've tried 5 different riders. Nobody can stay on for more than 10 seconds. Blackwell's getting desperate." In desperation, Maya approached Jason with a dangerous request. "We need evidence of what they're doing to him. Photos, videos, anything." Despite the risk to his livelihood, Jason agreed. "I've worked for Blackwell for 12 years, but what they're doing to that horse isn't training, it's torture." 3 days later, Jason appeared at Catherine's hotel with a USB drive in hand, his expression grim. "I couldn't watch it all," he admitted, handing it over. "But it's all there. The electroshocks, the food and water deprivation, the hobbling." The footage was even worse than Maya had feared. Thunder, once proud and powerful, appeared hollow-eyed and desperate in the videos. The most disturbing clip showed Jackson Blackwell himself watching impassively, as Frank's assistants applied electric prods when Thunder refused to accept a rider. The magnate commenting coldly, "Do whatever it takes to break him. That Mexican girl made him too soft." Catherine's legal team reviewed the evidence with growing confidence. "This crosses the line from training into abuse," the lead attorney confirmed. "Even in Texas, where livestock laws favor owners, this could constitute animal cruelty." With the evidence secured, Catherine reached out to contacts at the Austin Chronicle, arranging an interview for Maya. The resulting article, "The Horse Whisperer vs. the Rodeo Empire," painted a compelling picture of traditional brutality contrasted with Maya's gentle methods. The piece went viral across Texas social media, drawing attention from animal welfare organizations and rodeo fans alike. Jackson Blackwell's response was swift and ruthless. Security at the ranch doubled, with explicit instructions to keep Maya off the property at all costs. Additionally, he dispatched a team of lawyers to deliver cease and desist letters, threatening lawsuits for defamation against both Maya and Catherine. "He's scared," Catherine observed when the legal notices arrived. "Jackson only unleashes the full legal arsenal when he feels genuinely threatened." As public pressure mounted, the Latino community of Sweetwater rallied around Maya. Elena organized a prayer vigil outside the ranch gates, where dozens gathered with candles despite the threatening presence of private security. Miguel, the elderly Ferrador, spoke eloquently to a local reporter about the traditional Mexican understanding of horse communication that Maya embodied. "This is not new knowledge she brings," he explained in his heavily accented English. "This is ancient wisdom about respecting the spirit of the horse, not breaking it." Online, the hashtag #LetMayaRide began trending regionally, then statewide, drawing support from unexpected quarters. Several retired rodeo champions spoke out about the need for the sport to evolve beyond cruel practices. A country music star who had been scheduled to perform at the Sweetwater Grand Rodeo publicly questioned whether he wanted to be associated with the event given the controversy. The movement gained further momentum when Diego arranged for several equine behavior specialists to publish an open letter supporting Maya's methodology, explaining in scientific terms why trauma-informed training produced better, more reliable results than fear-based breaking. As the pressure intensified, Jackson Blackwell's public image suffered. Corporate sponsors began expressing private concerns about their association with the upcoming rodeo, especially after animal welfare groups announced plans to protest outside the event. In a transparent attempt to control the situation, Carter Blackwell arrived at La Paloma one evening in his father's luxury SUV, accompanied by two men in expensive suits. He requested a private table and asked the waitress to summon Maya, who had been helping in the kitchen. "Miss Rodriguez," he greeted her with artificial warmth when she approached. "Please, join us." Maya remained standing, arms crossed defensively. "What do you want, Carter?" "My father believes we've had a miscommunication," he replied smoothly, sliding an envelope across the table. "He values your contribution and wants to resolve our differences." Inside the envelope, Maya found a new contract offering her immediate reinstatement as Thunder's trainer, with a salary even higher than the original offer. But the fine print revealed the true agenda. She would be required to coordinate with the existing training team, issue a public statement retracting any claims of mistreatment, and sign an ironclad non-disclosure agreement. "In other words," Maya said, dropping the contract back on the table, "you want me to be quiet while you torture Thunder?" Carter's smile tightened. "I prefer to call it traditional methodology. And let's be clear, Thunder is legally Blackwell Ranch property. What we do with him is our right." "And if I refuse?" Carter's eyes slid meaningfully around the restaurant, lingering on Elena and the kitchen staff. "It would be unfortunate if the health department decided to conduct a surprise inspection here. Or if immigration became interested in your friend's documentation status." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. After Carter departed, Elena, Diego, and several others gathered in the back room to discuss their options. "We have to be practical," Elena argued. "These people have all the power, all the money." "They can't silence all of us," Diego countered, his voice passionate despite his physical limitations. "The evidence Jason collected could be dismissed as selective editing," Miguel interjected. "In court, the Blackwell's lawyers would destroy us." As they debated, Jason texted Maya with a heartbreaking update. "Thunder's condition critical. Refusing all food now. Stands with head down, won't respond to anyone. He's looking for you every time the door opens." The next morning brought a devastating announcement. Blackwell Ranch issued a press release stating that Thunder would indeed compete in the Grand Rodeo, ridden by Carter Blackwell himself in a demonstration of revolutionary express training techniques. Hope arrived from an unexpected source that afternoon. Catherine's phone rang during their strategy session, and her expression transformed as she listened to the caller. "I have news," she announced after hanging up. "My sources tell me Jackson is growing desperate. Thunder is physically deteriorating, and none of his trainers can handle him. The rodeo is less than 2 weeks away, and their star attraction is becoming a liability rather than an asset." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "This gives us leverage, but we need to act quickly and decisively." That evening, Catherine arranged for Maya to give an exclusive interview to a prominent statewide news program. With the evidence Jason had provided playing in the background, Maya explained Thunder's trauma history and the gentle methods that had built his trust before Blackwell's team destroyed it with brutal techniques. The interview, juxtaposed with the heartbreaking footage of Thunder's mistreatment, created an immediate public sensation. Within hours, Rodeo Save Thunder was trending nationally, and even celebrities were sharing the story. The Blackwell Ranch's social media accounts were flooded with outraged comments. By morning, several major rodeo sponsors had contacted the Blackwell organization, expressing concern about the negative publicity. The potential financial impact was significant enough that Jackson finally called a press conference to address the situation. Standing before cameras at the ranch entrance, Jackson Blackwell announced what he called a fair competition to settle the matter. Maya would be permitted to participate in the rodeo with Thunder, competing directly against Carter. The winner would not only claim the event prize but also determine the future training approach for the horse. If she truly believes in her methods, he challenged the assembled reporters, let her prove their worth in the arena, where it really matters. What Jackson didn't mention publicly was the abusive contract he forced Maya to sign, stipulating that if she lost, she would permanently surrender all claims regarding Thunder and never speak about Blackwell Ranch training methods again. The night before the competition, Jason arranged for Maya to visit Thunder secretly. The stallion, visibly stressed and bearing the marks of spurs on his flanks, recognized her immediately. He approached with a soft nickering sound that seemed almost like a lament. "I know," she whispered, embracing his powerful neck. "Tomorrow we'll be together again, and this time, no one will separate us." Catherine's warning about Jackson's true intentions echoed in Maya's mind as she left Thunder's stall. The brief reunion had been bittersweet. Seeing the evidence of abuse on his magnificent body had filled her with equal parts sorrow and determination. Jackson Blackwell might see the upcoming rodeo as his path to victory, but Maya understood it was actually her one chance to save Thunder. Dawn broke over Sweetwater with a watercolor wash of pinks and golds, the early morning air still cool before the Texas heat would assert itself. Maya stood outside Thunder's stall, her heart racing as she contemplated the enormous task ahead. 2 weeks to rebuild what had been systematically destroyed, the fragile trust between herself and a traumatized animal. "We start again," she murmured, as Thunder watched her cautiously from the back of his stall. The stallion's eyes held a new wariness, his powerful body bearing the marks of harsh treatment. Small wounds from spurs, a raw spot where a severe bit had cut into his sensitive mouth, his coat dull from stress and inadequate care. Catherine appeared beside her, carrying a thermos of coffee. "I've been thinking about Jackson's plan," she said, handing Maya a steaming cup. "He never intended for you to compete. I'd bet my last dollar he plans to have Carter ride Thunder in the rodeo." "Then why allow me to work with him again?" Maya asked, watching Thunder's ears twitch at their voices. "Because he needs Thunder manageable," Catherine explained. "Frank's methods have failed spectacularly. You're the only one who's connected with him, so he'll use you to calm the horse, then replace you with Carter at the last minute." Maya took a determined sip of coffee. "Then we need to work fast, and we need help." They gathered in Catherine's hotel room that evening, a war council of unlikely allies. Jason provided detailed notes about Thunder's condition and recent treatment. Diego contributed his expertise on rodeo requirements and competition rules. Elena brought food and boundless moral support, while Miguel offered generations of traditional horse wisdom. "We need to simulate rodeo conditions," Diego explained, sketching a diagram on hotel stationery. "Lights, crowds, noise, all the things that will trigger his fear. But we introduce them gradually, under controlled circumstances." "My cousin has land behind the restaurant," Elena offered. "It's not much, but we could create a small practice arena." Catherine nodded approvingly. "I'll handle equipment and logistics. Maya, you focus entirely on rebuilding your connection with Thunder." The next morning, Maya began the delicate process of reintroduction. Thunder's trauma had been compounded by the recent abuse, making him more defensive than when they'd first met. Where he had once approached the stall door to greet her, now he maintained a careful distance, watching her with uncertainty. "I know they hurt you," Maya said softly, settling on her familiar stool outside his stall. "And I wasn't here to stop them. I'm sorry for that." For hours, she simply sat, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes playing soft melodies on her guitar, but always maintaining a respectful distance. Thunder watched her intently, his intelligent eyes assessing, remembering, weighing trust against betrayal. By late afternoon, he had moved slightly closer to the stall door. When Maya offered an apple slice on her outstretched palm, he approached cautiously, nostrils flaring to catch her familiar scent. The moment his lips brushed her palm to take the fruit was a victory that brought tears to her eyes. "Building on broken foundations is harder than starting new," Diego observed as he watched their interaction, "but sometimes stronger for having been rebuilt." Each day brought small, hard-won progress. Maya reintroduced gentle touch, beginning with just her fingertips on Thunder's neck, progressing to long, calming strokes along his back. She spoke constantly in low, soothing tones, narrating her movements before making them, rebuilding predictability in a world that had become chaotic and painful for him. Behind La Paloma, the community transformed a vacant lot into a makeshift training arena. Families brought lumber for simple fencing, strung lights to simulate arena conditions, and gathered after work to construct the space. Children painted signs declaring "Viva Thunder" and "Justice for Maya" that they planned to bring to the rodeo. "It's not just about one horse anymore," Elena observed as she watched neighbors hammering and measuring in the evening light. "It's about dignity, about being seen." A week into their intensive retraining, Catherine arrived with concerning news. "I've found the official rodeo registration forms," she said, spreading documents across the tack room table. "Carter is listed as Thunder's rider, not you. Jackson never intended to let me compete," Maya realized, anger burning in her chest. "I confronted him about it," Catherine continued, her expression tight with controlled fury. "He said, and I quote, 'Be realistic, Catherine. The rodeo audience doesn't accept Mexican women.'" Maya felt the familiar sting of exclusion, but refused to let it distract her from what mattered most. "Then we work harder. Make Thunder respond only to me. Give them no choice." That evening, Diego conducted their first session in the practice arena. A dozen community members created controlled noise, clapping, cheering, playing recorded audience sounds through speakers. Thunder, already nervous in the new environment, grew increasingly agitated as the volume increased. "Ground him with your presence," Diego instructed as Thunder began to prance nervously. "Remind him you're his safe harbor in the storm." Maya placed her hand on Thunder's neck, feeling the rapid pulse beneath his skin. She began to hum the lullaby she had played for him during their first sessions, maintaining eye contact while the chaos swirled around them. Gradually, remarkably, his breathing slowed to match hers. "That's it," she encouraged. "We face it together." Each day they increased the stimulation. Brighter lights, louder sounds, more people. Thunder's progress wasn't linear. Some days brought setbacks when a particular sound or movement triggered his trauma response. But with patient repetition and constant reassurance, he began to distinguish between genuine threats and rodeo stimuli. On the morning marking 10 days before the rodeo, Maya arrived at the stables to find Jason waiting with a troubled expression. "Blackwell's implemented new restrictions," he explained. "You can only work with Thunder during business hours, under direct supervision." "He's trying to limit our progress," Maya realized, anger flashing through her. Despite the new obstacles, Maya persevered. When Thunder accepted a light saddle again for the first time since their separation, the small group of Latino workers watching from a respectful distance broke into spontaneous applause. Miguel approached afterward, his weathered hands gently patting Thunder's flank. "My grandfather would say this horse has found his alma gemela, his soul match. Some connections cannot be broken by men like Blackwell." Word of Thunder's progress spread beyond the ranch. Curious onlookers gathered at the property boundaries, some supportive with encouraging signs, others skeptical of the Mexican horse witch, as some local cowboys had dubbed her. The most significant breakthrough came exactly 1 week before the rodeo. After days of gradual reintroduction to being ridden, Thunder allowed Maya to mount him in the practice arena behind La Paloma. As she settled into the saddle, she could feel the momentary tension in his powerful body, the instinctive memory of pain and domination, before he exhaled deeply and relaxed under her familiar weight. "We did it," she whispered, leaning forward to stroke his neck. "You trusted me again." Diego watched from his wheelchair, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Now show them what partnership looks like," he called out. Maya guided Thunder around the makeshift arena using the lightest of cues. A gentle pressure of her calf, a subtle shift in her weight. Where traditional training would have demanded harsh bits and spurs, Thunder responded to whispered cues and the harmony of their bodies moving as one. The small crowd that had gathered to watch burst into applause as they completed a series of flowing movements that demonstrated both control and freedom. Even Catherine, usually reserved, was smiling broadly. "That's what they fear," Diego said quietly to Catherine. "Not that her methods won't work, but that they work too well. It challenges everything they believe about power and control. 3 days before the rodeo, Maya faced her greatest test yet. They organized a full dress rehearsal at the practice arena, complete with spotlights, a larger crowd of community members, and recorded rodeo announcements. Thunder, who had been progressing steadily in familiar surroundings, immediately tensed at the overwhelming sensory input. Maya felt his muscles bunch beneath her, his breathing quickening as survival instincts kicked in. For a moment, she feared they would lose all their progress in a single catastrophic setback. Then she remembered Sarah's words, "Some hearts hear what can't be heard with ears." Instead of pulling on the reins or forcing compliance, Maya leaned forward until her lips were close to Thunder's ear. She began to sing softly, the same lullaby that had first connected them, her voice a thread of calm in the chaotic environment. Thunder's ears swiveled back to catch her voice. His breathing slowed. The bunched muscles beneath her gradually relaxed. He hadn't conquered his fear, but he had chosen to trust her through it, the most profound victory yet. The day before the rodeo, Maya was summoned to Jackson Blackwell's office. She arrived to find Carter standing beside his father's desk, holding a professional rodeo saddle. "Impressive work preparing my horse, Rodriguez," Carter said, patting the expensive leather. "Now that he's manageable, I'll take over from here. After all, the rodeo contract has my name as the competitor, and you've served your purpose." Maya stared at Carter, the sinking feeling in her stomach turning to a hard knot of anger. It had been obvious from the beginning that the Blackwells were using her, but hearing it stated so baldly still cut deep. "Thunder doesn't respond to just anyone," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "He's not a machine you can simply take over once it's been fixed." Carter laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive in the opulent office. "He's a horse, Rodriguez. An expensive piece of property. He'll do what we make him do." Jackson Blackwell leaned forward in his leather chair, fingers steepled. "I appreciate your contribution, Miss Rodriguez, but let's be clear about what was always the arrangement. You were hired to solve a problem with my investment. You've done that, and you'll be compensated. But the Blackwell name appears on the rodeo program, not yours." "That was never our agreement," Maya protested, her hands clenching at her sides. "Thunder trusts me. He responds to my methods, my voice. If Carter tries to ride him, he'll do fine," Jackson interrupted. "We have ways to ensure cooperation if necessary." The implication was clear, and it made Maya's blood run cold. "You mean drugs? Force? After everything we've accomplished with patience and trust?" "Business is business," Jackson replied with a dismissive wave. "Carter has been training for weeks on our other horses. He knows what he's doing." Maya turned to Carter, searching for any sign of empathy. "You've seen Thunder's progress. You know he responds to gentleness, not force. Why destroy that?" "Because, sweetheart," Carter replied, his smile never reaching his eyes. "This isn't about the horse. It's about showing everyone who's in charge. The Blackwells run this town, not some Mexican stable girl with a guitar." Dismissed from the office, Maya found Catherine waiting outside, her expression grim as Maya relayed the conversation. "We knew this was coming," Catherine said, guiding Maya toward her car. "But we're not without options. I've been making calls all morning." They drove directly to the local television station where a reporter named Sarah Chen was waiting. Maya had met her briefly after the viral article, and the woman's sharp eyes missed nothing as Maya explained the latest development. "So they never intended to let you compete?" Sarah confirmed, taking rapid notes. "Despite the public challenge Jackson made?" "They used me to calm Thunder, to make him manageable," Maya explained, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Now they're sidelining me so Carter can take the glory." The interview aired that evening on regional news, framing the story as one of betrayal and exploitation. Sarah skillfully highlighted the contrast between Maya's genuine concern for Thunder's welfare and the Blackwells' treatment of him as merely an investment to be exploited. By morning, social media had exploded with reactions. The hashtags "Let Maya Ride" and "Justice for Thunder" trended across Texas, drawing comments from animal welfare advocates, rodeo fans, and even several celebrities who had picked up the story. The public relations nightmare is growing, Catherine observed as they monitored the online response. Jackson hates negative publicity more than anything. At the makeshift training arena behind La Paloma, a strategy session was underway. Diego had spread diagrams of the rodeo grounds across a folding table, while Elena distributed coffee to the growing circle of supporters. Carter can't control Thunder, Diego stated confidently. Even with training, the horse won't respond to him the way he does to Maya. They'll use stronger methods, Jason warned, having joined them on his lunch break. Frank's been preparing special equipment, harsher bits, tighter cinches, anything to force compliance. Maya paced the dusty ground, her mind racing. If I could just get into the arena, show the judges and audience how Thunder responds to gentle methods versus force. That's it, Catherine said suddenly, her eyes lighting with realization. The rules. She pulled out her phone, scrolling rapidly through documents. I've been researching rodeo regulations for days. There's something here, an old rule barely used anymore. The next morning, Maya and Catherine arrived at the rodeo grounds where officials were preparing for the weekend's events. Armed with printed regulations and determination, they requested a meeting with the head judge. The Rider's Choice Challenge, Catherine explained, pointing to the relevant section in the rule book. When there's a dispute about who should ride a particular animal, both riders demonstrate their control, and the horse essentially chooses through its performance. The officials exchanged skeptical glances. "Ma'am, that rule hasn't been invoked in at least 30 years, one said. It's practically ceremonial at this point. But it's still in the official rule book, Catherine pressed, and it was designed precisely for situations like this. As they debated, several reporters who had been covering the controversy approached, cameras and microphones ready. "Is it true that the Mexican trainer who rehabilitated Thunder is being prevented from competing?" one called out. "Are the Blackwells refusing to honor their public challenge?" asked another. Sensing the growing media interest, the head judge cleared his throat uncomfortably. "We'll need to consult with the rodeo board." By afternoon, pressure had mounted. Calls flooded the rodeo office, and online petitions demanding fair treatment garnered thousands of signatures. Faced with growing public scrutiny, the officials reluctantly agreed to honor the ancient rule. Jackson Blackwell received the news with barely contained fury, summoning Maya to a confrontation near the practice arena. "You think you're clever," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Using obscure regulations and public sentiment to force my hand." "I'm just asking for a fair chance," Maya replied, refusing to be intimidated. "The same chance you publicly offered before trying to renege." Jackson's calculating eyes assessed her. "Fine. The challenge will proceed tomorrow morning. Carter will demonstrate his skills first, then you. But understand this. When you fail, as you will, Thunder remains mine to do with as I please." That evening, the rodeo grounds hummed with anticipation. Word of the unusual competition had spread, drawing curious spectators for what was normally a preparation day. The arena had been divided, with a section cordoned off for the special challenge the following morning. In Thunder's temporary stall, Maya spent hours simply reconnecting, rebuilding the calm that had been disrupted by the tense atmosphere. The stallion seemed to sense the importance of the moment, his dark eyes following her with unusual intensity. "Tomorrow decides everything," she told him, stroking his powerful neck. "But whatever happens, I won't abandon you again." Diego wheeled himself into the stall area, bringing a thermos of Elena's strong coffee. "Carter's been practicing all day," he reported. "He's good, Maya, technically very skilled." "But does he listen to the horse?" Maya asked, accepting the steaming cup gratefully. Diego shook his head. "He commands, he doesn't communicate. There's a difference." Dawn broke clear and bright over the rodeo grounds. Maya arrived early to find the parking areas already filling with vehicles, many bearing handmade signs supporting her. The Latino community had turned out in force, families arriving together, many wearing red bandanas as a show of solidarity. Inside the preparation area, Carter was being fitted with an elaborate rodeo outfit, custom leather chaps, a silver-embellished belt, and an expensive hat. His saddle gleamed with polished conchos and hand-tooled designs that proclaimed Blackwell Ranch ownership. Maya wore simple jeans and a white cotton shirt, her only concession to the occasion being a colorful woven belt that Elena had insisted she borrow for luck. Her own tack was modest but well-maintained, lacking decorative flourishes but designed for the horse's comfort. The contrast couldn't be more obvious, Catherine murmured as they watched Carter's entourage fuss over his appearance. Flash versus substance. The stands filled rapidly as the announcement of the Rider's Choice Challenge spread. On one side sat the traditional rodeo crowd, wealthy ranchers, business associates of the Blackwells, the established power structure of Sweetwater. On the other, a growing sea of red bandanas and homemade signs, housekeepers, ranch hands, restaurant workers, the invisible workforce that kept the town running. At 10 o'clock, the challenge began. Carter went first, demonstrating his skills on another Blackwell horse, a well-trained Palomino that responded precisely to his commands. His performance was technically flawless, clean transitions, perfect circles, impressive sliding stops. The traditional rodeo crowd applauded appreciatively as he completed his demonstration. Then came the crucial moment. Carter approaching Thunder. The stallion had been brought to the edge of the arena, his eyes wide as he took in the crowds, the unfamiliar environment, the sensory overload that would trigger any traumatized animal. "Remember what we practiced," Frank Miller instructed Carter, handing him a crop. "Show him who's boss right from the start." As Carter approached, Thunder's body language changed instantly. His ears flattened, his muscles tensed, his eyes showed white around the edges, all clear warning signs that Maya recognized from across the arena. "He's going to bolt," she whispered to Catherine. "Or fight." Carter, either not seeing or ignoring the warnings, attempted to mount forcefully. Thunder exploded into motion, rearing powerfully. Only Carter's excellent riding skills prevented him from being thrown immediately. But the battle that ensued was ugly. Man versus horse, force versus fear, domination versus panic. Frank hurried forward with the severe bit and spurs they had planned to use, but the head judge intercepted him. "No changing equipment during the challenge," he stated firmly. "Traditional rules are clear." After several minutes of struggle that grew increasingly dangerous for both horse and rider, Carter was forced to dismount, Thunder having made his rejection unmistakably clear. "The horse is impossible," Carter declared, red-faced and furious as he stormed from the arena. "No one can ride him." A hush fell over the crowd as Maya's turn arrived. She entered the arena simply, without fanfare, carrying only a simple rope halter rather than the elaborate bridle Carter had attempted to use. Thunder stood trembling at the far end, sweat darkening his black coat, eyes still wide with fear and mistrust. Maya approached slowly, making no sudden movements, maintaining eye contact from a respectful distance. "What's she doing?" someone in the crowd asked loudly as Maya stopped several yards from Thunder, not attempting to catch or control him. Instead, she began to speak in a low, steady voice that carried in the suddenly silent arena. "I know you're scared," she said in Spanish, the language she had used during their first sessions. "This is too much, too fast, but I'm here, just like before." Thunder's ears flickered toward her voice, recognition dawning in his eyes. Maya slowly sat cross-legged on the ground, making herself smaller, less threatening. Then she began to hum the lullaby that had become their private language of trust. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, as the crowd watched in stunned silence, Thunder took one hesitant step toward Maya, then another. His approach was cautious but deliberate, each step a choice rather than a submission. When he reached her, he lowered his magnificent head, nostrils flaring as he took in her familiar scent. Maya rose slowly, still humming, and placed a gentle hand on his neck. The touch became a soft stroke, and Thunder visibly relaxed under her fingers. With unhurried movements, Maya placed the simple rope halter on Thunder's head. He accepted it without resistance, their reconnection transcending the chaos around them. When she asked permission to mount with a gentle pressure on his back, Thunder stood perfectly still, waiting. The contrast to Carter's battle could not have been more dramatic. Where there had been struggle, now there was harmony. Where there had been fear, now there was trust. Maya guided Thunder around the arena using barely perceptible cues. A light touch of her leg, a shift in her weight, sometimes just her voice. Together they created a dance of mutual respect that demonstrated true partnership rather than domination. When they finished, the arena erupted in applause. Even some of the traditional rodeo crowd found themselves standing, recognizing the rare beauty of what they had witnessed. The judges conferred briefly before announcing their verdict. The Rider's Choice Challenge clearly demonstrates that Thunder performs optimally with Maya Rodriguez. She will be permitted to ride him in tomorrow's competition. As Maya dismounted, Jackson Blackwell pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with anger. "This isn't over," he shouted, loud enough for nearby spectators and press to hear. "That horse cost me $200,000, and no rule or Mexican sentimentality will stop me from using him as I see fit. Thunder will participate in tomorrow's main event with Carter riding, even if we have to drug him to make it happen." Jackson Blackwell's threat echoed across the rodeo grounds, shocking the crowd into momentary silence. His words hung in the still air, revealing the raw desperation of a man unaccustomed to losing control. Maya stood beside Thunder, one hand resting protectively on his neck, feeling the stallion tense at the anger in Jackson's voice. The rodeo organizers converged in urgent discussion, clearly distressed by this public outburst. Catherine Blackwell pushed through the gathering crowd, her face set with determination as she approached the head judge. "That was a threat to drug a competition animal," she stated firmly, loud enough for nearby reporters to hear. "I trust the rodeo committee will take appropriate action to ensure the integrity of tomorrow's event." The head judge, a veteran cowboy with silver hair and a weathered face, nodded gravely. "We'll have independent veterinarians on standby to check all animals before competition," he announced. "Any evidence of performance-altering substances will result in immediate disqualification." As Jackson was led away by his entourage, Maya focused entirely on Thunder. The public confrontation had unsettled him, his ears flicking nervously, muscles quivering beneath her touch. She murmured softly in Spanish, grounding him with her presence while the chaos of the arena swirled around them. That evening, the rodeo organizers called an emergency meeting. Maya sat stiffly between Catherine and Diego, facing the panel of officials across a conference table in the administrative trailer. Jackson and Carter Blackwell sat opposite, flanked by their attorneys. "The Rider's Choice Challenge has been settled according to tradition," the head judge declared. "Miss Rodriguez has earned the right to ride Thunder in tomorrow's competition. However," he added, looking directly at Jackson, "as the legal owner, Mr. Blackwell retains the right to withdraw the animal from competition entirely." Jackson's cold smile didn't reach his eyes. "That won't be necessary. The competition will proceed as planned." "With appropriate safeguards," Catherine interjected. "I propose veterinary examinations immediately before the event, with blood samples drawn and secured." After tense negotiation, the committee announced their decision. Maya would ride Thunder in the competition, with veterinary checks implemented as Catherine suggested. Jackson, though clearly furious, recognized the public relations disaster of appearing to obstruct fairness. As they left the meeting, Jason intercepted Maya in the darkened parking lot, his expression grave. "Be careful," he warned in a low voice. "Frank Miller was asking about Thunder's stall assignments and security rotations. I don't trust what they might try overnight." Catherine immediately arranged for volunteers to maintain a constant watch over Thunder's stall. Elena organized community members into shifts, ensuring Thunder would never be left unguarded before the competition. In the pre-dawn darkness, Maya slipped into the stables to find Miguel already there, his weathered hands methodically braiding protection charms into Thunder's mane, an old tradition from his homeland. "Para protección," he explained softly as Maya approached. "My grandmother taught me these patterns. They guard against mal de ojo, the evil eye." Maya smiled gratefully, touching the intricate braids. "Thunder needs all the protection we can give him today." As sunrise painted the eastern sky with streaks of gold and crimson, veterinarians arrived to conduct their examinations. They drew blood samples from all competing animals, sealing them in tamper-proof containers. Thunder stood patiently through the process, his trust in Maya evident as she remained by his side, continuously speaking to him in gentle tones. The Sweetwater Grand Rodeo officially opened at 10 o'clock, the stands filling rapidly with spectators drawn by both the scheduled events and the controversy surrounding Thunder. The division among the crowd was visible. Wealthy ranch families and Blackwell supporters on one side, working-class community members with their red bandanas on the other. Maya watched other competitors from the preparation area, her stomach knotting with anxiety as she observed their polished performances. Carter Blackwell rode another Blackwell horse to enthusiastic applause from his supporters, executing a technically perfect routine that showcased years of professional training. Diego wheeled himself to Maya's side, reading the doubt in her expression. "They have flash and training," he acknowledged. "But you and Thunder have something more powerful. Truth. You're not performing a routine, you're demonstrating a relationship." As her time approached, Maya focused on keeping Thunder calm amid the sensory onslaught of the rodeo. The blaring announcements, music, cheering crowds, and unfamiliar smells. She led him through breathing exercises they had practiced, synchronizing her own breath with his, creating a bubble of calm in the chaotic environment. "Remember what we've worked on," Diego advised as Maya prepared to enter the arena. "Don't try to match their technical perfection. Show them something they've never seen before. Partnership instead of domination." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Next up, in an unusual appearance, we have Maya Rodriguez riding Thunder, the stallion at the center of recent controversy. Let's see if this unconventional pair can stand up to championship standards." Maya guided Thunder into the bright lights of the arena, feeling him tense beneath her as the crowd's roar washed over them. The effects of the sedative Frank Miller had managed to administer during the night, despite the vigilant watches, were subtle but noticeable to Maya. Thunder's responses were slightly dulled, his movements a fraction slower than normal, his eyes not quite focusing properly. "It's okay," she whispered, leaning forward to speak directly into his ear. "We adjust. We adapt. Just listen to my voice." Their routine began shakily. Thunder moved with uncharacteristic hesitation, the sedative clouding his responses. From the Blackwell section came mocking laughter and comments just loud enough to carry, "Looks like the miracle worker isn't so miraculous after all." Maya refused to push Thunder beyond what he could give in his compromised state. Instead, she simplified their routine, focusing on the connection between them rather than technical difficulty. She spoke continuously to him, reminding him of their journey together, of the trust they had built from nothing. Midway through their performance, something began to change. The metabolic processes of Thunder's powerful body started to clear the sedative more rapidly than Frank had anticipated. With each passing minute, his movements became more coordinated, his responses more precise. Maya felt the shift beneath her, like a fog lifting, allowing Thunder's true self to emerge. "That's it," she encouraged, her voice for his ears alone. "Come back to me." As Thunder regained clarity, Maya adjusted their routine accordingly. They moved from basic maneuvers to more complex patterns, their communication growing more fluid with each passing minute. Where other competitors had demonstrated rigid precision, Maya and Thunder showed organic harmony, each movement flowing naturally from the one before. The crowd began to respond to the transformation occurring before them. The mockery from the Blackwell section faded, as even skeptical observers recognized they were witnessing something extraordinary. When Maya released the reins entirely for their final sequence, guiding Thunder using only leg pressure and weight shifts, a hush fell over the arena. Their concluding movement was unplanned, a moment of pure intuitive connection. Thunder executed a perfect spinning stop, then reared majestically, not in fear or aggression, but in power and joy, before settling gently back to all fours. Maya's hands rested lightly on his neck, her body moving in perfect synchrony with his, two beings functioning as one. The silence that followed lasted only seconds before the arena erupted in thunderous applause. The red bandana section rose to their feet as one, cheering wildly. More surprising were the traditional rodeo fans who joined them, ranchers and cowboys who recognized authentic horsemanship when they saw it. Maya dismounted, her legs shaky with adrenaline and emotion. Thunder lowered his head to her shoulder in a gesture that needed no interpretation. Gratitude, connection, trust fulfilled. The judges conferred intensely, their expressions revealing the challenge of scoring such an unconventional performance against traditional standards. When the scores appeared on the board, a collective gasp rose from the crowd. Maya and Thunder had placed second overall, an extraordinary achievement given the circumstances. More importantly, they had transformed the audience's understanding of what partnership between human and horse could look like. As Maya led Thunder from the arena, she was met by a wall of supporters, Elena, Miguel, Jason, and dozens of community members with tears in their eyes and pride on their faces. Catherine pushed through the crowd, her expression triumphant. "You've done more than win a ribbon," she said, embracing Maya. "You've changed minds today." Jackson and Carter Blackwell stood at the periphery, their expressions dark with thwarted expectations. Frank Miller was nowhere to be seen, having disappeared after veterinarians began investigating the source of Thunder's initial sluggishness. The award ceremony proceeded with traditional pomp. The winner, a third-generation rodeo champion from a prestigious ranch, receiving his trophy with practiced humility. When Maya was called forward to accept second place, the crowd's reaction told the true story of the day, their cheers far exceeding those for the technical winner. With Thunder standing proudly beside her, Maya stepped to the microphone, unexpected tears blurring her vision. "Thank you for this recognition," she began, her voice steady despite her emotion. "But I want to be clear about something important. Today wasn't about winning or losing. It was about showing a different way forward." She stroked Thunder's neck as she continued. "This amazing animal has taught me that true partnership comes from mutual respect, not fear or domination. And today marks his last rodeo performance." A murmur ran through the crowd as she continued. "From now on, Thunder will serve as an ambassador for humane training methods, helping other traumatized horses heal." Jackson Blackwell pushed forward, his face contorted with anger. "That's not your decision to make. That horse is my property." Catherine stepped smoothly to Maya's side. "Actually, Jackson, we should discuss that. The board of directors at the Texas Equine Protection Alliance has authorized me to make you an offer for Thunder, well above market value. And considering the pending investigation into attempted drugging of a competition animal, I suggest you consider it carefully." As Jackson sputtered in indignation, Maya turned back to the crowd. "Thank you all for witnessing our journey. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a new chapter." Catherine's firm stance silenced the rodeo grounds as she faced Jackson Blackwell, proposal paperwork already in hand. The crowd watched the standoff with bated breath, power and wealth confronted by conviction and compassion. Jackson's face flushed with barely contained fury, but something in his eyes shifted as he glanced between the papers, the cheering crowd, and Thunder. "This isn't over," he muttered, but his words lacked their earlier venom. Maya remained beside Thunder, one hand resting on his neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath her fingers. The stallion stood calm despite the tension, his dark eyes watching the confrontation with newfound steadiness. He had come so far from the terrified, aggressive animal she'd first encountered. The emergency meeting of the rodeo organizers convened within the hour. Seated around a long table in the administrative building, Maya found herself facing the entire Blackwell contingent. Jackson sat rigid in his chair, flanked by lawyers whose expensive suits and cold expressions matched their client's demeanor. "Let's be clear," the head judge began. "We have evidence suggesting Thunder was administered a sedative before today's competition. Our veterinarians are analyzing the blood samples now, but the symptoms were consistent with mild tranquilization." "Preposterous," one of Jackson's lawyers interjected. "Mr. Blackwell had everything to gain from the horse performing well." "Or everything to gain from Miss Rodriguez failing," Catherine countered calmly. The discussion grew heated, accusations flying across the table until the door opened and a veterinarian entered, holding a folder of results. "The blood work confirms it," she announced. "Low levels of ace-promazine in Thunder's system. Not enough to cause obvious impairment to untrained observers, but sufficient to affect performance." The revelation sent ripples through the room. In the heavy silence that followed, Jackson Blackwell seemed to deflate slightly, the indomitable force of his personality diminishing as he recognized his position weakening by the minute. "Given these findings," the head judge stated, "the Rodeo Committee has no choice but to launch a formal investigation, which will include reporting to the appropriate animal welfare authorities." Jackson leaned toward his lawyers, a hurried conference conducted in whispers before he straightened in his chair. "Perhaps," he said, his businessman's instinct for cutting losses taking over, "we can find a reasonable solution here." The negotiation that followed lasted hours. By sunset, an agreement had been reached. Jackson would sell Thunder to the Texas Equine Protection Alliance for a figure that allowed him to save face financially, while Catherine secured a legally binding commitment that he would review and reform training practices at Blackwell Ranch. When Maya finally emerged from the building, stars had appeared in the velvet Texas sky. Elena, Diego, and a small crowd of supporters waited anxiously, their faces lighting up at her weary smile. "It's done," she announced. "Thunder is free." The celebration at La Paloma that night spilled into the street, the restaurant's modest space unable to contain the community's joy. Miguel played traditional songs on an old guitar. Children danced with red bandanas waving, and even some of the more open-minded local cowboys joined the festivities, curious about the woman who had changed the conversation about horsemanship in their tradition-bound world. Maya slipped away early, returning to the stables where Thunder was still housed until transportation could be arranged. In the quiet darkness, illuminated only by a single overhead light, she found him alert and watchful, his stall door now bearing a sign with the Texas Equine Protection Alliance logo. "We did it," she whispered, entering the stall and resting her forehead against his. "No more fear, no more pain." Thunder exhaled softly, his breath warm against her skin. In his intelligent eyes, Maya saw something that hadn't been there before. Not just trust, but peace. The constant vigilance of trauma had eased, replaced by the certainty that he was safe. Dawn brought Catherine and a specialized transport team to move Thunder to temporary accommodations, while more permanent arrangements were finalized. Maya supervised every detail of his loading, ensuring the traumatic associations of his previous trailer experience weren't triggered. "Talk to him constantly," she instructed the transport team. "Let him know what's happening before you do it. No surprises." As she watched the trailer pull away, Catherine placed a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't goodbye," she assured Maya. "It's just the beginning." 6 months passed in a whirlwind of change. Catherine, leveraging both her substantial personal resources and the publicity from the Thunder story, had purchased a large parcel of land on the outskirts of Sweetwater. The property, ironically adjacent to Blackwell Ranch, was transformed into the Sweetwater Equine Rehabilitation Center. Maya, now the center's director of training, stood on the porch of her small but comfortable house overlooking the main paddocks. The autumn sun cast golden light across fields where several horses grazed peacefully. The center had already taken in 10 animals with histories of trauma or abuse, each receiving individualized rehabilitation programs based on the methods Maya had pioneered with Thunder. The scandal following the rodeo had damaged Jackson Blackwell's standing in the community. Facing both public censure and the threat of legal action, he had sold significant portions of his property, including the section now housing the rehabilitation center. Though he maintained a smaller operation, his influence had waned considerably. More surprising was Carter's transformation. The public humiliation had triggered unexpected soul-searching in the younger Blackwell. After several months of hostile distance, he had approached Maya with awkward but seemingly genuine interest in her methods. Now he occasionally volunteered at the center, his journey from arrogance to humility still ongoing but promising. Maya shaded her eyes against the setting sun, watching as Diego conducted a training session with local teenagers, many from the Latino community. Using special adaptive equipment, he was able to demonstrate riding techniques despite his disability, his expertise and patience, making him an exceptional teacher. "He's found his purpose again," Elena remarked, joining Maya on the porch with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "We all have," Maya replied, accepting the drink gratefully. The center had become more than just a sanctuary for traumatized horses. It had evolved into a community hub where traditional cowboys worked alongside immigrant families, where wealth and poverty found common ground in compassion for animals, where healing transcended the divisions that had long defined Sweetwater. Catherine's foundation provided scholarships for underprivileged local youth to learn natural horsemanship, while Miguel offered workshops on traditional Mexican horse care techniques, his generations of knowledge finally receiving the respect it deserved. Thunder's role had evolved as well. No longer expected to perform for human entertainment, he had become the center's ambassador, demonstrating to skeptical trainers and owners that even the most traumatized animals could recover with proper understanding. His calm presence helped newly arrived horses adjust, as if he communicated to them that safety was possible here. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, Maya sat cross-legged in Thunder's spacious paddock, her old guitar across her lap. She played softly, watching as Thunder grazed nearby, free to approach or retreat as he chose. The fence line remained open to adjoining fields. Thunder stayed not because he was contained, but because he wanted to. As the music floated on the gentle breeze, Thunder raised his head, ears pivoting toward the familiar melodies. With unhurried steps, he approached Maya, lowering his magnificent head to her level in a gesture of equine companionship that still moved her deeply after all their time together. "Some might call this a miracle," Maya said to Elena, who had come to observe this daily ritual. "But it's not. It's just what happens when we choose to understand instead of dominate." In the distance, a truck pulled up the center's long driveway. Maya recognized the vehicle. It belonged to a rancher who had initially been among the most vocal critics of her methods. Now he was bringing his own traumatized mare for rehabilitation, convinced by Thunder's transformation that there might be another way. As new horses arrived at the center, each carrying their own histories of fear and pain, Maya approached them with the same patient presence she had offered Thunder. Some responded quickly, their trauma less deeply embedded. Others required months of gentle persistence before the first breakthrough. But each success strengthened her conviction that healing was possible, even for the most broken spirits. Thunder watched from his paddock as the newest arrival, a skeletal Appaloosa with fear-wild eyes, was carefully unloaded. Something in the stallion's posture suggested recognition, perhaps of his own past reflected in the newcomer's terror. Maya noticed him observing intently as she began the patient work of establishing trust with the frightened mare. That evening, as sunset painted the Texas sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Maya leaned against the paddock fence, watching Thunder's silhouette against the dying light. He stood tall and proud, so different from the dangerous, traumatized animal she'd first encountered in that isolated stall at Blackwell Ranch. Catherine joined her, clipboard in hand, reviewing plans for the center's expansion. "We've received 3 more applications for the training program," she said. "Word is spreading." "Good," Maya replied simply. "There are so many animals out there suffering because humans don't understand how to listen." As darkness fell, small lights illuminated the pathways between paddocks and buildings. In one of the fields, Diego was concluding a session with his teenage students, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze, a sound of joy and belonging that had once seemed impossible for many of these children on the margins of Sweetwater society. Thunder approached the fence where Maya stood, nickering softly in greeting. When she placed her hand on his neck, she felt the steady strength beneath his sleek coat. No trembling, no fear, just the solid presence of an animal at peace with himself and his world. "You know," Catherine observed, watching their interaction, "when people see you two together, they finally understand what partnership really means. Not control, not dominance, but choice and trust." As stars appeared in the vast Texas sky, Maya took out her guitar one last time for the day. The first notes of the lullaby she had played for Thunder during their earliest sessions floated through the evening air. Without hesitation, the stallion moved closer, listening with the focused attention that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. On the horizon, a new group of rescue horses was visible, being carefully loaded into trailers for the journey to Sweetwater. Each animal carried their own wounds, visible and invisible. Each would require patience and understanding. But watching Thunder's quiet strength beside her, Maya felt a deep certainty that healing was possible for all of them. As the final notes of her song faded into the night, Thunder rested his head gently against Maya's shoulder, not as a traumatized survivor, but as a partner who had chosen his path. In the distance, the lights of Sweetwater twinkled, a community forever changed by one woman's refusal to accept that some hearts were beyond healing.